Do you remember being at school and one of the kids in the class being a bit naughty and the teacher saying, "It's your own time you're wasting"? And for me, I used to sit there thinking, it's not. It's 1 o'clock on a Tuesday. I have to be here. And by the way, I was obviously never the naughty kid. I was a model student. Anyway, this month marks 3 years since I became a self-employed freelancer. And I thought what I'd do today is talk a little bit about some of the productivity tips that I've picked up throughout those 3 years. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, clearly I'm self-employed. Nobody in their right mind would hire somebody with facial hair like this. But I'm happily self-employed. Right, so tip number 1 for productivity when you're a freelancer, or just any time, to be honest, is all about sleep. Now, when I first became a freelancer, I was all on the blogs and the vlogs, all about how to become a successful self-employed person. And one of the biggest tips seemed to be getting up at 4 and 5 a.m, doing 3 or 4 hours work before anyone else was even awake and getting a head start on the day, getting ahead of everyone else. And that is how you become successful. Which I've learned, for me at least, is absolute bullshit. Sleep, good sleep, is the key to productivity, as far as I'm concerned. I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast maybe about a year ago about sleep. I'll link it in the description, and it blew my mind completely. So loads of people like to claim that they only need like 4 hours sleep a night. The vast majority of people need between 7 and 9. And did you know that if you only get 4 or 5 hours sleep and then you drive, it's basically the same as you being drunk while you're driving? Did you know that? Unbelievable. So yeah, I'd say the biggest advantage of working from home, as I do, is that I can pretty much always make sure that I get enough sleep. And that is an absolute key to productivity, I find, getting enough sleep. So if you've got to be up tomorrow morning for anything, what I'd suggest is go to bed. I don't care what time you're watching this, just go to bed now. By the way, I know this isn't strictly a photography video. Hopefully that's okay. I just thought this might be interesting to some people. I could be very wrong. Number 2, I make 2 lists every day. I make a list of quick jobs and a list of longer jobs that need doing. Basically 5 minutes is the parameter that I set for that. Less than 5 minutes is the quick jobs, more than 5 minutes is the long jobs. And I try and start every day by doing 2 or 3 of the quick jobs just to get into the flow. So I'll cancel the transparent toaster that I ordered from Amazon the day before, for example. I've just found the world's best thing. You can watch your toast, which I thought would be good, but apparently it's a waste of money. Then when you've done a few quick jobs, you're a bit more in the flow, and then you can start concentrating on some of the more difficult tasks at hand. I found that to be a good way to sort of ease yourself into the working day. Probably doesn't work for everyone, but for me, I need to trick myself into thinking that all the jobs will be easy, and then I'll get into the flow. Number 3 is to write down all your ideas. Now, the blessing and the curse of being a self-employed person is that you don't have a boss, which sounds 100% positive at first, doesn't it? I mean, you don't have anyone telling you what to do. The negative is that you don't have anyone telling you what to do. And what that means is that you have to decide your strategy, everything you're going to work on, where you're going to go, who you're going to meet with, who you're going to have a phone call with. All of that, you constantly have to decide that all by yourself. And in my experience, what that leads to is continual overthinking, constantly questioning what you should be doing, who you should be doing it with, where you should be going, what hours you should be working, everything. And there's nothing more annoying than your brain working really hard doing all this thinking and not taking advantage of it by writing down some of the good and bad ideas that you happen to have in that time. So I use Evernote to try and write down all my ideas. I've always got my phone on me typically, although I'm trying not to always have my phone on me. I've got it on my desktop as well, and if I don't have that, I've got a notebook, and if I don't have that, I'll just use like a serviette or a tissue or something, or my hand, just to make sure that any ideas that I have, good or bad, I've noted them down, and then hopefully they're out of my mind and I don't have to kind of continually think about them or remember them, which is even worse. If I could only give people one tip about productivity, it would be to write things down whenever you can. Tip number 4 is to go to new places. Now, for better or worse, I, for some reason, do all my best thinking when I'm on planes. I've got airplane mode on my phone, there's no Wi-Fi, there's limited distractions when you sit on a plane, and that typically leads to uninterrupted thought. And we don't get all that much of that these days because everyone's got their phone. So any few seconds of potential boredom, you've got your phone out. What I find is if I'm in a new place and I have limited distractions, that, whether it's on a plane or not, is the best environment for me to think up new ideas and to do my best thinking. And so going to coffee shops, libraries, just anywhere new and trying to limit your distractions is where you'll inevitably do your best work, in my experience. Again, it might not be the same for everyone, but that's just what I've found. Kind of encourages blue sky thinking, which on a plane does make sense. Number 5 is to be aware of distractions before they happen. Now this is either a productivity powerhouse or a productivity drain. And I think all of you pretty much will know what I mean by that. How many times do you go on your phone with a very clear intention of what you need to check on your phone, only to find that 10 minutes later you've still not checked what you were going to check, and actually you're looking at bee populations in Turkmenistan? Which has never happened, actually. I just said that because I thought it made me sound cultured. Usually I'm looking at memes. Finding a way to use your phone rather than have your phone use you is crucial to productivity. And I'm fully aware of the huge addiction epidemic that these are causing that no one's really talking about, but I'm constantly looking for ways to reduce the power that this thing has over me. And I think largely I've got it under control now. So before I go on my phone now, I try and be really intentional about not getting distracted by whatever I happen to see as soon as I open it. So for a few months, I put all my apps on the second page, and on the first page my screensaver just said don't get distracted, so I had that reminder before I swiped to see all my apps, and that worked quite well to the point where I don't feel I need that anymore. And I can just be quite intentional about what I'm doing on my phone. That saves hours a day, seriously. Number 6, I think, is the most important working part of the day, I've found, and it's not 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. What I've found is it's the last 15 minutes of the day. So in the last 15 minutes of the day, I take that time to plan out the next day. So I look at the weather forecast as a photographer to see if there's anything that I could go and shoot. I write down all my quick jobs, I write down my long jobs, I try and work out when I'm going to do any exercise, if I'm going to do any exercise, all that kind of stuff, so that I go to bed or have an evening knowing what the next day holds, and there's no stress or anxiety about what the next day holds because it's already been decided. And that, I've found, is a huge reducer of stress, and it just gives me clarity and a bit of space to think about how I could make the next day better. And that has probably been, again, one of the biggest things that I've learned in the last 3 years. Number 7, should have got this out before. Number 7 is this book. Well, the premise of this book, which is the life-changing magic of not giving a fuck. Emily bought me this book a couple of years back, and I think she's regretted it ever since, because now if she wants to go to the garden centre, I just say no. But learning to say no, particularly as a freelancer, I think is one of the most crucial ingredients to becoming successful. Particularly when you're just starting out, because you've got this desire to say yes to everything, particularly when it's got money attached to it, just because you don't know where your next jobs are going to come from. The thing is, if you say no to stuff you're not absolutely over the moon about, it gives you more time to work on stuff that you are over the moon about. Which sounds completely obvious, but I found myself having to really resist the urge to try and please everyone and do everything I possibly can, just so that I have more time to kind of think about what I actually want to be doing, rather than what everyone else wants me to be doing. And this book was a huge help in that. And finally, learning to take constructive breaks is a big thing too. What I mean by that is that when I want a coffee break, because I've been working on editing a video for 3 hours, the temptation would be to watch an episode of South Park, which I love, but actually if I just concentrated on paying a credit card bill or doing another bit of life admin in that time, it's still a break from what I'm doing, and it's nowhere near as fun, but I get my life admin done. And that means that I build up enough time to, do stuff that's more fun than South Park, like go for a bike ride or something, which I appreciate some of you will not think that's more fun than South Park. And I have days when I'm on the fence, but Yeah. Anyway, I hope that was useful. Probably seems a bit random, I know, but I've been meaning to do this video for a while because I thought it might help some people. I promise I won't be indoors next time. I'm going to Iceland tomorrow, which is very much outdoors, and hopefully I'll do some filming there. And so until the next time, get some sleep.